Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Thanks for joining us. And this week we have Dean Geraghty on board. So, Dean, can you introduce yourself? Give us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Hey, thanks for having me on. So, my name's Dean Geraghty. Been shaping for bloody close to 35 years. I started surfing when I was like 14 and a half, so pretty old in today's terms. But surfing hooked me like from the get go, and it was just like that's it. And I remember just every day just running down to my shapers. He was about 10 kilometers away, and would run down there and go and watch him shape for an hour and a half, and then run back home for dinner, And, I was just absolutely immersed and hooked into surfing from the get go. And then it just evolved into shaping before I knew it. Like literally by 17, I was shaping. By 18, I just finished school. I was at uni. I was surfing 3 times a day. I was shaping when I could and surfing as much as I could. Anyway, surfing just elevated, and then I was fortunate enough to win national titles in South Africa twice in the Open division, and then eventually in the Masters. And then we moved over. I started a family, and we moved over to Australia. So Australia, I've been here for 13 years, and the shaping kind of took a backseat as I moved to Australia, and it was a kind of a big move for me to move away from, let's say, the surf industry as such. And then about a year ago, I really made this conscious decision to break free and of the normal day-to-day grind of life, and just get back to the very thing that actually brings me so much joy and pleasure, and that is to shape and to surf, and put that as the core focus. And it's incredible how that in its own way has molded and shaped my life. Like in this last year, it has changed the entire way that I look at even the way that I earn an income, believe it or not. So it's like, but it's given me complete freedom that every day, if I want to, I can go surfing. And I can still fit that in with accomplishing my work, doing what I need to do, and making sure that I got enough on the table every day just to pay the bills and get by, and to try and hopefully flourish and grow in the future. So it's been a big shift, a big pendulum shift in terms of way. But now that I'm back into it, I realize I should never have left it in the first place. And so, I kept doing it as a hobby. So I've always been connected to it over the last 13 years. But, literally now I just go, wow, this is the moment, So that's a little bit of a brief history in terms of a quick overview of where I started and where I'm at the moment. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's thing is like life just throws you curveballs and things happen, and like you've got to do what's necessary sometimes, haven't you? I mean,
Yeah.
anyone that knows me knows I'm a bit of a boomerang. I'm bouncing between sort of Hampshire and Cornwall all the time, which in terms of South Africa and Australia, it's not that big a deal. It's like a 4-hour drive, but so yeah, like I'll be heading back down to Cornwall a week after, like a week today, for at least the summer, and hopefully just get the work done a year round. It's a very seasonal place, and sometimes you got to do work
Yeah.
that's not necessarily what you want to do. But in order to do that, like I say, I was serving ice creams of all things today. Uh, Recording a podcast tonight. I'll be uploading another episode on Tuesday, and yeah, that's quite often the case at the minute. I mean, I don't have kids. I don't have a partner. I've got a Springer Spaniel, who's enough. But so it's trying to balance it. It's a nightmare, isn't it? But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like you say, if you can make it work and you can enjoy the fruits of your labor, then it is worth putting in, even if it's going to take 6 months, 2 years, 5 years down the line to get it going. You can sort of, excuse the pun, but you can shape the life that you want. And if that involves shaping surfboards, then even better. So yeah, what's how's it looking for you for the next year or two? Have you got any big plans coming up, or are you just
Just
enjoying
lost
as it
you.
goes?
Sorry, I lost you there, just there for a little second there. Sorry, Ross, just lost that last bit.
Ah, no, that's right. I was just asking. So, have you got any plans, like business wise, now for the next year or two, or is it just taking it as it comes?
I think it's I mean, it's been a full 8 month planning process to get me back into boards. And, like in South Africa, um, I was well known as a shaper and a surfer. So everyone in the surf industry, let's say, knew my name and knew who I was and what I'd done in surfing in South Africa. And coming to Australia, I'm literally anonymous. Like, there are so many good shapers and there's so many good surfers that, I'm literally at the bottom. So I'm having to just think about it from a real practical perspective of how do I just get that going, um, develop the content that I need, upgrade the website, create content and make it relevant to people today, and then start building my profile again. So I'm literally starting again. I'm 55 years old, but I'm starting again in a way. But it doesn't matter. It's like, because when you're truly passionate about something and you really love what you do, and it shows in the work that you do, then it will succeed. It's just time. It's the one thing that I realized I just needed was time to get back into the market. And again, with a difference of mindset, like, the traditional way that we always would get in the industry is, okay, we start and then we get a team rider, and we need a team rider to give us the credibility. I'm doing it completely other way around. I'm really genuinely, I looked at it, from the perspective that I don't need any team riders. I'm not even interested in the high level surfer as much as I can shape for the high level of surfer. The high level of surfer of today doesn't value what shapers actually really do today. And I rather look at it from the perspective that every single customer becomes my team rider, because ultimately, to see their growth and to see their surfing improve because of choices and knowledge and information that they're given through the process that I've developed, that to me becomes more rewarding than a team rider now. Like, the team rider thing side of things becomes like more of an ego tick rather than what is it actually achieving for you, for the business and for the brand. And I'll put myself in that perspective where I just go, right now, the average surfer is my client. That's who I want. I don't need any of the other things. But it really comes down to a specific client, and that's a client who really wants to improve their surfing. So if they're just surfing ad hoc, casually, that's not my client. It's a client that actually really goes out of their ways to try and get a surf in. They'll drive 3 hours and they mission, and they're doing whatever they need to do to go and get that water time so that they can improve and then be the best surfer they can. And then that's where I feel the knowledge around boards is where it's going to help them advance to the next level and the next level and so on. So that is my client. That's the specific client that I have in mind and really love working with. Like, that's what actually fuels me too. Like, to get like messages on my
Yeah,
phone, "Hey, Dean, board's amazing." Like, that's all I need, and it makes it worthwhile. And for the money that's made doing what I do, then that just keeps me going, and it keeps me, sort of, in a way, kind of allows me to, bring some other element to another person in life, that they can get another element of enjoyment out of something that they otherwise wouldn't know. And the whole world around shaping is, in today's modern terms, or way of things that are working today for the modern surfer, the art of shaping is lost. It's like you're you're told to ride a model. You're told to this model is the latest one. You know, this will give you you'll surf like Julian or whatever. You know, and the reality is that it's not. It's not this one box fits all type thing. And I think that that's where we're losing our way. I think we're losing our way in terms of the priority in terms of surfing. Because without a surfboard, you can't surf.
Mm.
And I think the emphasis on understanding shape, fins, everything around that, and the choices of volume. When we talk volume, you know, this blatant or flippant sort of way that volume is used, as though it's like the magic number. It's not. Volume is just a number. It's just like the length of a board or the width of a board or the thickness of the board. It's just a measurement, but it doesn't tell you where that volume is. So no one's really explaining in a technical shaper perspective to a surfer why they're putting volume in a specific place. And that's the most important aspect about volume. It's where you're putting it. I did a
Yeah.
sort of like a blog on volume, and I haven't posted it yet, but it's literally I've just used a plank, a wooden beam, and said, okay, this is so many liters. Try and surf this, you know. And the reality is, you wouldn't be able to surf it. You wouldn't even be able to stable and paddle because you'd just be flopping all over the place. But it's 44 liters, you know, and so I've used that sort of way of analyzing that, how simplified do we using the term volume in something. So yeah, that's I suppose really I've even forgotten what the original question was, Ross.
Yeah. No, that's fine, mate. That's going to happen a lot. Don't you worry. So that reminded me. I was talking to I don't know if you've heard of him, Luke Hart. He's a shaper in the UK, and
No.
he's really cool guy. And I rode a couple of his boards actually, but one in particular years ago, about 10 years back, and about 20 kilos ago as well. Uh, and it was a 5'8", and it was a signature board. It was called the Heart Attack, and it was 5'8", little swallowtail. Wasn't particularly thick, wasn't particularly wide. I think it was maybe 19 and a half push. And I didn't really pay that much attention to it back then, which I'm kind of, in one respect, I'm gutted. But thankfully, I've got to know Luke a little bit. I had him on the podcast weeks back. He knows what board I'm on about. And so thankfully, if I do need to, or as and when, I try and uh, pretend to be in my 20s again, uh, I can I can get that board remade. But I was what got me was how that board was one of them boards, like one of the few that come along that you just put under your arm, you just take a look at the surf and go, right, this is a board stand. I'm taking my 5'8", and you could go out in almost any condition. It went in small stuff like small English waves, so that's saying something. Uh, but I'd also take it out when there was some punch, and it was a good head and a half. Maybe it would probably go in bigger waves than that. I didn't really surf much bigger than that because it was so rare. Um, but I had it as little quad. There's some little hex fin quads, probably medium or larges. I loved that board. It paddled like a dream. Caught so many good waves on it. And when I was talking to Luke a couple of months back about it, he was saying basically what he'd done is similar to some of the old 70s sort of single fin boards. The wide point was right up at the front. Like it
Yep.
wasn't halfway down, it wasn't just above the front. We're talking right where my chest was on a 5'8". I'm only 5'7" anyway. And you just had these really long rails coming back from that high point to the tail so that you could really get your chest down when you paddled. Now, I was what, 5'8", 80 something kilo, low 80 kilo, and about 44 chest, so I'm not a small guy, short but not small, and I could still just out paddle so many people. I could get in relatively early on a wave, and I'm absolutely glad I got rid of the board. To be honest, I ended up chopping a load of boards in and having like this one all rounder, which I think lasted about 3 months, and ended up getting something else. But yeah, it was incredible. But it showed how much difference it makes. That wasn't a high literage board either. I mean, if you think about it,
Yeah.
5'8", 90 and a half, I'm probably looking around a 30 litre mark.
Yeah.
It wasn't particularly thick, so it could have even come just shy of that.
Yeah.
Whereas if I went to look for a surfboard now, in terms of literage, I'm probably going to be looking at 38, 40 litres. For a daily driver on some pretty crowded peaks, I'm going 40 litres, or I'm taking my longboard, like,
Yeah.
because I'm greedy. But that board now, I'd really struggle with. I took
Yeah.
out a 6'3" Luke Shaw chubby cheddar, which I want to say was 35 to 36 litres. I took that to Morocco. And once it's up and riding, it's super fun board, rounded pin, like it goes like stink, it's
Yeah.
great. But I struggled because it is your typical shortboard shape for built for a slightly bigger guy, but I hadn't surfed much through winter. Um, Although I'd been in a gym, I'll be honest, I'd neglected my cardio a little bit. I had plenty going on, but the volume, from what I remember, was towards the middle, maybe even slightly back half. It was
Back.
not right up the front where that heart attack was. And
Yeah.
it's incredible. If I'd have swapped them boards, I think I'd have struggled just as much on the 5'8", but it would have been whatever that is, 5, 6, 7 inches shorter. I could
100.
have had
Yeah.
more fun on the wave, I think, as well. So yeah, you're definitely right in as much as literage is great and it can be a good guideline, but there is so much more to look
So
at when
what
you're getting a
so
board.
what led you to that choice though? Like to get that type of board versus another? Like for you personally?
I've been playing around with just surfing different boards, and I actually, for a while, I really enjoy the typical shortboard shape. I had a couple of local shaped ones. I very rarely buy new. I quite often, there's a really great surf shop in Newquay. I'm going to give Tris a little shout out now, but yeah, Crogden. If you need to part X, that is the guy to go to. I've done some weird and wonderful deals with him. But
Lovely.
I had a old Adams P1, I think it was. I'm not a massive fan of the boards themselves, but this shape, again, it come in a little part exchange thing, and I done some of the best performance surfing I've ever done. I still remember surfing one spot. I'd taken off bottom turn, done this snap, and my mate had looked from the back and thought I'd fallen off. Like spray went everywhere, and then he just saw my
Yeah.
head pop up about 10 feet down the line. He's like, "Why, well, made it?" When he told
Yeah.
me, I was like, "Oh." I might have been 26, but I felt like a 10-year-old grom, absolutely frothing. But yeah, so for quite a while, I was going with these typical boards. When I had that heart attack, I also had the newer version of that Adams board. I'd actually done a couple of training sessions with the guy that founded Adams Shapes, and that was part of the deal. Was I got this board, and it was super fun. A lot thicker than your normal performance shortboard, but still your typical pointy nose, rounded pin, and I really like the way a round pin feels when you're doing your turns. It's smooth, it's clean.
Definitely.
But
Definitely.
yeah, if I'm gonna coach myself, I should be on stubbier boards because, like I say, I'm currently sitting at about 100 kilo. I'm about 46-inch chest, so short, wide.
Right.
I
Yeah.
need that thick and the width under my chest. just for the paddling.
Yeah,
Once I'm up and riding, it doesn't really matter. But I think that's where I got on so well with that heart attack was,
yeah,
especially as a quad. Once I was up, I've got the power in my legs. Like I do plenty of strength training. There's no problem there. I can generate as much speed and power as I
yeah.
need, so I could fly that around. And as a quad, it works really well. But yeah, unless it's a really meaty day, then I'm gonna be avoiding your typical shortboard shapes, like your old '90s style.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that length to dig in, but at the same time, you don't necessarily need that if you got the volume under your chest, do you?
Correct. And it's also relative to waves height. Like if you're surfing, let's say average 3 foot or around that, you really don't that sort of typical high performance shortboard pulled in nose really, to be honest, doesn't, unless you're at an elite level, you really don't need that style of design to suit that wave. Like you can easily get away with, like what's behind me there. That, for example, that's a 20
Yeah,
there, for example. But you could do hybrids of twins. You could do, um, like I've got a design called a wingfish, and it's designed like with that fuller volume forward and then kind of little with a wing, and then it can either go into a swallow or it can go into a round pin. But the reason for those choices is to kind of allow you to do exactly what you're trying to achieve, because it all comes down to the paddling. It all comes down to catching a wave. So I break it down into a few things. It's like
hmm.
when you're surfing, positioning is key. So learning where to position yourself in the ocean is the key thing, to catch the right wave at the right time. So if you just look at that first line of focus in terms of surfing and when you're out there in the water, that comes from water time experience. That's why we always say, like, if you can just go down and shoot down and get 40 minutes in the surf, every bit of time that you're clocking up in the ocean, you're learning to understand the ocean at different, like from high tide, low tide, shifting peaks, sweeps, currents, whatever, so that you're figuring out where to position yourself. So once you've got positioning dialed, and then you know when you're turning for the right wave, then everything from that point becomes board. So how does that board paddle you into the wave? Are you getting up to your feet at the right time? And the moment that you're up to the feet, that's when everything else then is of less consequence, because the takeoff is everything. So if you don't have the right volume in the right place and you getting into the wave, you've decided you got positioning perfect, but you getting in half a second late, you're stuffed. And that is the truth of everything. You're always, if you're half a second late, you're chasing a section, you're behind a section, you're always chasing to get around something, and therefore your timing is late to do the first turn and the second turn and so on, so on, so on. So you're chasing yourself the whole way. So really the focus comes down to really being able to paddle. So I think for every surfer out there, let's say watching this, it's about them assessing for themselves, hey, am I actually getting in on the wave at the right time? And if they're not, that's when that choice about, gee, what do I need next? That's when I would say, hey, go and talk to your local shaper. Go and talk to the local. I mean, you've got local shapers that are good shapers, and they would be worthwhile, like going having that conversation. Sure, is it going to cost? Is it going to cost more? Yes, it's going to cost more, and I think that goes back to even the other point that you made about even buying secondhand. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you start the journey of buying secondhand, and I've seen this firsthand here in Australia, is you get, I've had so many customers who have brought me boards and shown me what they're riding. And they're riding like 3, 4 different shapers boards. So to be honest with you, they're having to relearn their surfing every single time they're jumping onto a board for a different condition. And I'm like, what are you doing? Do you realize what you've actually created? You've created more confusion. So I actually would encourage more surfers to actually go, so one, support your local shaper, because without those shapers, you don't, if everything was made as a model and was all made offshore, imagine we were all surfing the same cookie cutter style boards. It would be insanity. Like literally the whole aspect of the dynamic of surfing would be lost. So that's number one. So two is that local shapers are going to shape for your local conditions. That's something that you can never take away. They understand that local condition more so than, let's say, me here sitting in the sunny coast in Australia. So, and I can echo that point, because when I moved from South Africa to where I'm living now on the Sunshine Coast here in Australia, I literally, my board lengths dropped 2 inches. So I was riding 6.0s and now I'm riding 5.10s, and I literally had to rechange the way that the boards were designed for these conditions here, just because the swell isn't as powerful as, let's say, Cape Town was. So those are the dynamics there. So that's the second thing, to really take the opportunity to support the local shapers, because they know the local conditions that you're surfing. But I think really it's about fostering the relationship, because you need someone else independent of yourself to be able to also give you some guidelines, some coaching. And then that's hence like why coaching has become such a big thing too, because it's that third independent perspective that you need. Like the shaper can only do so much. Then it's also up to your style, technique, and what you're doing, and your strength in terms of what your strengths and weaknesses are. So there's a whole lot that goes into this whole surfing experience. But not having that relationship, and it's not to say that every shaper out there is either really very good at communicating. That's another thing too. You get some shapers that are really just, they don't listen to the average surfer. So they'll just make them what they say, what they think, and that's not a relationship. That's not a learning process. That almost becomes the same as walking into a surf shop and having to make the decision yourself. And I think this is where I'm trying to get at with probably the role of the shaper and how it can actually help surfers along the way, is instead of you fumbling your way trying to make these choices yourself by buying secondhand boards and to this and to that, is really literally to the point where you go, it's going to cost you a lot more money and you're wasting time, because you're not getting younger. And as you're getting older, you have all the things that start affecting you in a negative way. Like I know, I'm 55. I've been through those gaps where like at 30, I started noticing a change. 40, I definitely started feeling another change. 50, another one. And so it becomes increasingly harder. And it'll lend me to another topic just now. But the essence of that is that we're evolving all the time. So you need to have this relationship with someone who can go, okay, you were riding the heart attack, okay, as an example, but you've evolved now. Okay, over winter, you don't actually surf that much. Okay, so let's create something that's like the heart attack, but then let's evolve it to something that during winter or when you're coming out of winter, you're not going to be as paddling fit. You're not going to be as conditioned to surfing as you were in summer. Hey, let's give you something that what we're going to call it is the transitional board. And then you get into that transitional board, and that transitional board gets you back into that swing where you can then jump back onto the heart attack and go, I'm back. Okay. And even though you have these different changes in your life, the shaper understands what you've been going through, what you've ridden, and is tracking it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing that specifically for my customers. I'm tracking everything. I'm literally got it on a database, keep all that information, and I can actually see what they were riding and where they're going and what they're changing. So as they're improving, the boards are getting smaller and smaller. So obviously as you get better, your volume and overall volume and dimensions start becoming smaller and smaller and more fine-tuned to the point that okay, that's the optimal shortboard. But I always say that working on your main all-round shortboard is my main focus, because thereafter, once I've nailed the first shortboard and the all-round board, then I can either scale up or I can scale down, and that means it becomes a seamless experience. It means you surfer like yourself could literally jump on, the waves are really tiny today, I can go to my step down, or the waves are picked up and I can go to my step up, but you don't have to feel like you're resurfing all over again and learn to surfing that board. It's all connected. So they actually feel all the same. So that it allows you to evolve and advance and in all those different conditions without having to learn how to surf a new shape over again. So I think that's the benefit there, is that yes, it does cost money. And I think again, separating who's the ideal customer for GS, for example, is a surfer who's willing to say acknowledge that surfing is their number one sport. It is their number one activity. It's their number one thing that they need for their own sanity to keep them alive and focused in this world. And that's their core focus. So then I say, okay, if that's the case, then you've got to make that investment in that one particular sport. So if it's surfing that is yours, then you've got to make that investment in your own equipment, because going to be the driver. But it's not just the equipment; it's the relationship, so that you can learn to understand the design dynamics that go behind you as a surfer and the board itself.
Exactly. And like the point you made a minute ago with having like the coach as well, I think when it comes to any sort of coaching, mentoring, and relationship in that sort of way, you need to, from the consumer point of view, you don't want, we'll say, the shaper or the surf coach to be a yes man or yes woman. You want them to go, okay, yeah, no, that's fine, but this is also happening, or I feel this would be a better route. And to be able to turn around and go, I know you want that super fast, super twitchy FRK plus. However, you're 17 stone, the 6'2" is really not going to work out for you, and you surf once every other month. Like you
100%.
that's quite an extreme example, kind of. In the UK, it's not that extreme, really. Um, and I noticed that. So I used to work up at the Wave in Bristol, same setup as Urban Surf, and obviously got the Firewire, Slater Designs, Man Keen ranges up there. And don't get me wrong, I'd made full use of that, especially as a member of staff, and it was
Yeah.
super fun. I do rate the FRK Plus. I think it's a really fun board, and it taught me to slow my surfing right down. Um, any you blink in the wrong direction, that thing starts turning on you. But it also, so when I was at Surf Snowdonia the year before, and they had a more old school range. So they had like the Greedy Beaver, they had the Gamma, which I think was a predecessor to the FRK potentially. Um, but they had all these different styles, shapes, which was great fun. But again, they've all been pointing me towards like going back towards like that heart attack board and going, well, yes, you can ride these other boards and they're super fun. Um, but that was in a wave pool environment where you can just go, okay, I need to sit a bit deeper, or I need to sit a bit further forward. Because once you're up, it's fine. You can have anything under your feet. Um, but yeah, and I think, like I was saying about the mentor thing, having someone in your corner that's going to actually tell you what's best for you, not necessarily what you want to hear, is like anything in life, is actually going to do you better in the long term. Um,
100%.
whereas I think there are people out there that will go, yeah, yeah, no, mate, I'll shave that for you. That's brilliant. You're like, oh, yeah, sweet. Being maybe young, definitely naive, and super keen, they'll just go, cool, thank you very much, there's your board, or see you in 6 weeks,
Mm,
or whatever it's going to be.
yeah.
Having
Yeah.
someone go, nah, I think let's pull that midline up a little bit. We'll taper the rails in here, or give you a little bit more volume here and here. That's going to make a difference. And that's, like you say, it's just service, isn't it? You're, from a business point of view, you're actually going to be doing yourself a lot more favors, because they're going to go, actually, Dean told me how it was, and my surf coach kind of backed him up and said I could do with a bigger board for myself rather than this
Yeah.
thing I've been riding. And yeah, I've now been riding this hybrid fish 20, and I'm catching so many more waves, and I finally nailed a re-entry. And they're
Yeah.
going to go, oh, yeah, now I want to keep this board, but I also want, it's a win-win. They get a
Yeah,
bigger quiver. You get a more you get a retaining customer, and everyone has a great time. Whereas if you just sell them on another typical shortboard shape, take the money, they may or may not come back.
correct. Because ultimately, if they don't perform on that board and they're struggling, what are they going to do? They're just moving on to another thing. And I think it's
Yeah,
this whole notion of instant gratification. And I think you've surfed long enough to know that it's surfing is something that will challenge you your whole life. It will never stop challenging. As long as you are surfing and it's not a wave pool and you're out there in the ocean, you are being, you're literally constantly tested. So
yeah,
your requirements will change from time to time, from phase to phase in your life. And I think you really need to, where if you make wiser choices as opposed to sort of these spontaneous, oh, I want this because it looks good and I feel like I can surf well on that. But if you don't have the knowledge behind you and you don't have the true understanding behind you, you really are going to struggle and it's just money down the tube. You are literally not good. And your surfing actually just goes backwards. It doesn't go forward. And I think really that's the thing that a lot of surfers forget. They're wanting that instant gratification and that instant something. But it's about understanding. If the more you understand about your own surfing and your own style and your own technique, and that you can be able to harness that with a relationship with a shaper, the better surfer you're going to be in the short, medium to long term. And I
yeah,
think the amount of time that gets wasted with surfers trying all these different models and things that they're in their mind, they think that's what I want. That's how I want to surf. Unfortunately, the reality is that that is not necessarily it. And I think that's bringing back the whole need for shapers in every country, in every surf location. Like it's so important that they are there to be able to design equipment for those local conditions to suit the local surfers, and and to be able to have that. I mean, just to not just go into a surf shop and go, okay, this is my choice. Okay, I've got to pick one of those, and that's what you're left with. And I just don't think that that's because I don't even think that sometimes the measurements are correct for them. They might have the right design, but the actual measurements aren't because they're all model based, and because they're model based, they're not customized to suit the individual. So they are having to forego something to get this stock board, and that's my mission. I think it's just I just genuinely do not believe that surfers of any aspiring level should be buying a rack board. Like, period. It's the number one thing in terms of if you want to advance as a surfer. And again, it comes back to that whole thing: is surfing your number one sort of go to activity? If it's second, third, and you're mixing it up with everything else, then no, then just buy that stock board and be done with it. Just enjoy surfing for whenever you get a chance to go out there. But if you're really a very active and surfer and you're out there and that's your number one mission is to be the best surfer, you really do need to have good equipment. You need to build that relationship with your local shaper, and to be honest with you, is working with coaches like yourself, because it's actually going to be the third party advice that's going to help them even progress even further. Looking back at style and technique, I mean, you need to learn to understand and see yourself on video to be able to understand, okay, this is how I'm riding a wave. What am I doing wrong? Are my feet in the wrong position? Because if your feet are in the wrong position, no matter how good a board I've shaped for anyone, it ain't going to go. So it's knowing what the arms are doing so that you can really sort of maximize what the board's been created to do. If your arms aren't doing it and you're not turning your chest in the direction that you need to go, all these things. It's just not going to help that surfer. But I think knowing who you are as a surfer, aligned with a coach to be able to help you get that clarity. Like, are you just a cruiser? Just somebody who just likes to cruise down the line? Well, if you like to cruise down the line, then twin fins and longboards kind of suit your style. That actually suits the actual design of the boards will suit that style of surfing, and you'll get heaps of fun and you'll paddle into waves really good. But if you're a top to bottom high performance surfer and you're wanting to do tight little turns right back into the pocket and fins busting out, well, you're going to need the right equipment for that, and that means that you're going to need the high performance style designs. But it doesn't mean, like for example, the simplest way to put that would be you wouldn't really be riding twin fins in that scenario. You would actually be riding, let's say, either quads, thrusters, depending on which design you're riding. But that's the important thing, is to know who you are as a surfer first and foremost, so that you can actually then go, okay, well, that's my style. That's my leaning towards. I'm either a cruisy, just down the line type surfer, or I'm a really high performance. That's what in my mind I want to surf like that. And if that's the case, then that then really puts into perspective sharing that information with a shaper, and sharing that information with a coach and being honest and real about it. I think like in what I do for my customers, I create like a bio form that they got to fill out, and in the top of that bio form is just be as honest as possible. Pretending here is not going to help you. So we need the raw data. We need the raw facts. It doesn't help that you say, hey, I'm 100 kilos, but you write down 85 because you
Yeah.
want to be 85. So it's like that type of stuff. You got to get down to the raw info so that you can use it as the platform to build everything from there.
Yeah. No, 100%. And the same with the training side of things. You've got to have as much information as possible. I've had clients in the past, they've written nothing down on their PARQ, which is their basically health and safety form, medical questionnaire. And then you're like 3 weeks in, and I don't know, my knee's playing upstairs. Oh, what'd you do? Oh, I had an operation a couple of years ago. You're like, oh, cool. That's the one that you didn't put on the form, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm like, kind of didn't know about this. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been having 3 sets of 20 meters of walking lunges. You melon.
Yeah.
But hey ho, that's people and that's life. But no, you're right. Like the more information you can put in, the more you're going to get out of it. And having sort of like that sort of team around you will help you improve your surfing immensely. I mean,
Definitely.
that's what I'm trying to get with a lot of people now is surfing. I mean, it's a lot more dedicated in Australia. I don't really know much about surfing in South Africa, but I know Australia, obviously California, these more sort of structured countries that have had surfing as part of their sort of mainstream sports for a lot longer. In the UK, although it's starting to change, let's face it, for years our best athlete was sponsored by a lager and a Cornish pasty. That for a while their factory was even in Devon. They know who I'm talking about. And you just think, well, yeah, all right, every surfer loves a beer after a nice sunny day surfing, blah, blah, blah. It's great. Not many don't. But I'm still of the belief that if you're an athlete, you want to make sure you're putting across the right thing. Like, okay, fine, Cristiano Ronaldo can get away with being on a Subway advert, but let's face it, we all know he trains hard. We know he's one of the best football players ever. That hurts me to say that because I'm really not a fan of football, but he's a good example. If you
Yeah.
like, still digressing a little bit there, but yeah, surfing's just had this thing in the UK where it's not really been taken all that seriously. It's something you do in the summer months when you go down to Cornwall on
It's like a
holiday for a
pastime as
week.
opposed to an actual
Yeah,
focused sport. Yeah.
the core surfers, that group is definitely building. Um, it's, I mean, even since I started surfing early 2000s. I think it was around 2003. And it's certainly blown up since then. And then COVID hit and it went even bigger again
Yeah.
because so many people were going, oh, let's run away to the second homes in Cornwall. And they all started picking up the surfboards again. And people were remote working down there and blah, blah, blah. And it got quite popular again. And since Surf Snowdonia, the Wave in Bristol, Scotland's just opened up. It's making it accessible to those that live inland. And I still have met people that have never even heard of surfing in the UK. I'm like, what? Like, how can this
Yes.
be? And then I remember I don't do real jobs. I live by the beach and try and have a great time. Um, but you then, so the point I was going to go on to was that's another aspect to really make sure your equipment's dialed in because suddenly everywhere is getting busier. Like, although it wasn't taken that seriously, and it still isn't, people are
Yeah.
still not paying attention to diet, drinking too much, smoking too much, vaping, which don't get me started on that one. But it's all going against you, and yet people will go and drop £1,000 on a 7 to whatever Machado Cardo as a mid length. You're like, okay, awesome, lovely looking board. I'm sure it absolutely flies, but your mobility sucks because you work at a desk all day. You don't live anywhere near the beach, so
Yeah.
that's why you got the board in the first place because you're not surfing much, but you're not actually
Yeah.
going to the gym at all. You might play a bit of five-a-side on a Saturday morning with the lads, but what are you doing for the rest of Saturday? Well, you're drinking away the calories that you just burn off. And you've got, again, quite an extreme example, but you're not going to do yourself any favors, and yet you'll drop all this money on wetsuits, boards to try and get better and better and better. But you're sort of just throwing the money down the drain a little bit. Like you say,
Correct.
stock board and this whole lifestyle thing is just not going with it. Whereas if you look at a dedicated surfer in a lot of the other countries, there are some in the UK. I'm not completely writing the country off, but diet's a bit more tuned in. You're doing what you can in the gym if there's no surf, or you're at least staying active and keeping up with your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. You're making sure that you're not getting too heavy, getting too fat. You're producing power, you're producing your cardio output, so that when you go surfing, you're not going to be the lump out the back if you get out of the
Yeah.
back that's sort of trying to catch their breath and just slapping into a
Exactly.
few waves and going, oh, I can't surf anymore. You've really got to dial that in. So having that trifecta of your lifestyle, a shaper, and a coach is going to make your life as a surfer so much more fruitful that when you do decide, oh, you know what, I'm spending the money, I'm going to Bali, I'm going to Morocco, I'm going to Portugal, wherever you're going to go, you're not dropping, for argument's sake, £1,000 for a week surfing or 2 weeks surfing and then barely surf. Those that know about my trip to Morocco, you can pipe down. I was ill. I got a heat stroke. But yeah, that was from a winter in the UK, and then suddenly it's like 30 degrees. That's different. But yeah, it's you
I
just got to
think you
have
touched on
everything
something
there.
there, Ross. I think you
What's that?
touched on something. I think you touched on something there, Ross. Is that link between, let's say, the surfer, shaper, and let's say a coach, for example. I think what's different in Australia, let's say, possibly than the UK, is that surfing is like it's a lifestyle, and you choose to pursue that as a lifestyle. And I think that the choice that you have in the UK is that surfers don't choose surfing as their lifestyle, as 100% their lifestyle. And I think if you just look at the sheer crowds here in Australia, it's like it's nuts. Like it's literally nuts
Mm.
between the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast. But there's just so many surfers. It's crazy. Okay, and they're all out there. But you'll notice they're all out there like at the crack of dawn, and they're all, and then it just doesn't stop, and it's only by the afternoon that everyone's so tired and they've had too much sun or whatever the case may be, and then, that's when some of the breaks will open up. But I think the key thing out of that is it's lifestyle. So even around, like, even what I'm doing now as a business is I've chosen this lifestyle, to pursue this lifestyle, and everything else in my world revolves around this lifestyle, so that it allows me to still do what I can. So you have your limitations in the UK from a seasonal perspective, but also from a climate perspective. It's not like everyone can just up and go, okay, well, we're going to go to Bali every time it gets cold in the UK. Like, it's hard, you to uproot yourself. So not everyone is able to do that. So you've got to be able to learn how to navigate your lifestyle through those seasonal changes. And you touched on it there, is that you got to think about the conditioning. You can't let yourself go when it gets to wintertime and just let yourself go and go, okay, well, we just packed on 10, 15 kilos. I can tell you now, as you hit 30, 40, and 50, your metabolism is slowing every single time. And you just start and every time you do that, it's becoming harder to lose whatever you gain. And it's simple as that. And it's not like I'm eating more or anything else. And I can promise you, it's hard to stay conditioned, but you would do that with a purpose. And I think that's possibly the difference, is that here, because it's our lifestyle, we purposefully doing something. We're doing it always with purpose. So there's purpose to stay fit so that I can get surfing, or I can be a better paddler, or during the cold months, if you really cannot surf because it's absolutely that cold, then, like, okay, hey, I'm going to do my rowing training, whatever, just to keep these lats and all your muscles conditioned. Because that's the thing. If you lose your condition, it makes it, you're literally learning to surf again. So, and that's becomes the challenge in the UK. And I think once you understand, and that's probably why I was saying maybe earlier, I said, I've got like a step up board that I jump onto. If I've, let's say, had a week or 2 weeks of not surfing frequently, I jump on that. And it's exactly that board that you described. It's got that volume further forward. Hey, I just catch anything I want. And yes, it's not about radical turns. It's about just getting in. It's about getting the timing, getting your positioning right, and then getting in at the right time, and then being able to take off and just fly, and then once I've had one or two surfs on that and I'm feeling like I'm back, then I jump back onto my regular 510s again. So it's just, I think it's the purpose, it's the focus that is possibly that, let's say, your audience or the surfers in the UK, if they really want to be the best surfer they can, they got to put it into focus, and they got to go, that's what I'm doing everything for, and then use surfing as their lifestyle. So everything they're doing is around supporting that lifestyle.
Yeah, that's it. Because at the end of the day, like you say, the old saying, use it or lose it, is so true when it
Yep.
comes to fitness, just in general, and especially surfing. It's, you've not got a tennis court or a football pitch, indoor or outdoor, where your environment doesn't really change. Like, surfing's a pain in the backside. Especially in the UK, you got to wait for the planets to align to get a really good surf. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, you've got to be on top of it outside of the water as well.
definitely.
And even if you live on the coast, like peak summer, we might have a couple of weeks or a month where there's near enough no real waves. Maybe jump in on a foamy, and have a few fun little summer days, but that's about it. But yeah, so yeah, having that sort of base level of fitness will do wonders. Having your nutrition dialed in, knowing why you want to do it. And one of the points I wanted to make was, obviously, like you say, a lot of people in Australia live and breathe surfing. You've got that sort of consistency over there that it might not be the perfect day, but there's rideable waves up and down the coast. There's a lot more
Yeah.
nooks and crannies to go hide in and everything else. Um, and we don't really have that in the UK, but what we do have is a lot of people coming from inland, a lot of wave starved individuals that a lot of people now are starting to, like I said earlier, although it's not the most serious sport in the UK, especially compared to your mainstream cricket, tennis, you still need to have that level be behind you, even if it's not for your own longevity, even if it's just for the fact that there's not been any swell for the last 3 weeks. Your local
Yep.
spot's going to be firing up at the weekend, not even during the week. It's going to be prime time on a Saturday morning. Every man, woman, dog, goldfish is going to be down there for a wave. And if you're not fit enough to hustle on the peak, well, you may as well just go grab yourself a coffee, or play around on the inside, because everyone is as keen as you to catch a wave. So you've got to
Yeah.
have that level of fitness to just out paddle somebody else, out position somebody else. Um,
Well, that's no different to here in Australia. I promise you. If
yeah,
you look at Snapper Rocks or Ukira or on a
yeah,
weekend or on any given day, it is just nuts. It is nuts. It's like it's dog eat dog. It's like so. Yes, you do have to be focused and you have to be strong enough to be able to compete. So therefore, your choices about what you're doing and what equipment you're using is just as important as that to be able to help. But again, it comes back to this focus that you need to be focused in terms of what you're wanting to achieve. And if you're not, and you're just going to be swinging back the pines and think that you're going to be all good, well, when you hit 30 and you hit 40, you'll realize that you won't be good
it
because
doesn't
you're just
happen.
going backwards and your metabolism is slowing and your muscle memory is not there anymore. It doesn't. You lose that muscle memory as you get older. So it's really something that I've personally been through myself, so I can see it. And I really, it's the most weirdest thing. But in surfing, as you get older, you actually need to surf more than you did when you were younger. So it's almost like full circle. You know, you start as a grom and you just surf, 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 surf. Well, you literally need to, as you get older, to the oldest point, you actually got to do the same thing just to retain the muscle memory. So you can do that in let's
Yeah,
say, a concerted effort in terms of workout and in sort of gym exercises relating to surfing that can really help you. But if you're not, I think it really comes down to the same thing. If you're having periods of time with not being in the water and you can't get that, and you've literally left with the choice of a Saturday and it's going to be prime and everyone's down there and you've got to compete, well, you've got to be able to do something in that downtime to condition yourself to the point that when you go down on that one Saturday, you can compete comfortably.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's a hobby and it's for fun. But that's the whole point. Is yes, you have to compete, but that's so you can have fun. Like it's
totally.
sure it's nice having like a little conversation out the back, having a yarn with someone that maybe it's one of them relationships where you only have a catch up with them in the water. Um, but at the same time, you still want to be surfing. You still want to be paddling, catching a wave, riding it. And if you like, so I used to surf Bournemouth Pier, and um, it's so busy. Like it's always been a busy spot. They tried putting that reef in years back. That failed miserably down the road at Boscombe. But during that stage, they stripped back the pier at Boscombe, and what they done was allow the wind to get in between the pillars. So suddenly, that nice sheltered little spot on an easterly or a westerly was gone.
Yeah,
Like you had one real option if it got above sort of 5 or 6 knots, and that was an offshore. Otherwise, it was cross shore and there's a little river. So suddenly they took a spot, trashed it in the hopes of building this other spot, which is quite ironic. Everyone had to flood to Bournemouth when the wind got up because that was the most sheltered spot pretty much on the south
yeah,
coast, bar a
yeah,
couple of other ones. But even what used to be secret spots are now super busy. So yeah, if you're not going to put that effort in between, then either you got to sit there and have a little bit of a sulk because you're not catching enough waves, sack the session off completely, which defies the whole point, or you got to get yourself a gym membership, or go to my website and you got to get yourself a training program and get yourself sorted. Like
Yeah,
it's one of those. And I mean, I like to say, I was at that football game today, and I saw so many people my age that I'll be 40 in August. So I'm starting to feel the degeneration kicking in, especially after a couple of knee ops as well. Um, Winter's
yep,
not my favourite time for my right knee, but I'm watching these guys and I'm like, you know what? I might be heavier than I normally am, but I'm still feeling confident. Like I know that I'm heading back down to Cornwall a week today. I'll probably jump on my longboard. It makes more sense if it's anything under sort of head high. But I will be able to paddle out. I'll get out the back. I'll get my fair share of waves, and I'm going to have a great time. I could probably
yeah.
scratch into a few on my shortboard depending on the spot. But I look at some of these people and I'm like, all you're doing is drinking and vaping and eating dodgy food like all the time. Let alone today when it's game day, you're like, oh, I'm going to treat myself. You're like, well, treat yourself some broccoli, mate. Like that's what your body's really craving. Um,
It's not. It's because it's honestly the difference is because it's not their lifestyle.
yeah,
Like honestly, you should see the surfers here in Australia in comparison. Like the surfers that are really active surfers, everything they're doing is around supporting that lifestyle. So
yeah,
for example, their whole mission is they're in bed 8:30. They're getting for the sole reason that they're getting up at 5 o'clock so that they can be at the crack of dawn and they're out there and they're trying to get the waves. And everything is about getting the surf before they then knuckle down, have a cup of coffee, and then they're getting down to their work for the day. And then if they happen to get a gap, they'll actually their focus is, hey, I'm going to go and get another surf. So everything around everything that they're doing is around surfing. So they've made surfing their center.
yeah,
Everything else supports that cause. And I think that's probably the difference that you're alluding to there is that that's the difference in the type of surfer in the UK versus the surfer in Australia. It's like we literally everything that I'm doing right now is like allowing me to be able to like facilitate that I can go and surf when I want to. Like how
yeah,
awesome is that? Like, and I'm not retired by any means. I'm still busy, active, doing my business and growing it, and I don't actually want to retire. I enjoy what I do. So again, it's important to be able to put that into context, and I think it'll allow. I think once you convert in the way of your thinking around making surfing your lifestyle and everything else around that works, and once you've made this monumental shift in then it's amazing how everything else falls in place. But I think if you're like that old saying, one foot in, one foot out, you're never really deciding to do that. You're always going to be in this flip flop phase of surfing in your life. And I think that's probably what you're saying there is that that's what it comes across to me when you explain it. It
yeah,
seems like you have a totally different mindset towards surfing in the UK compared to Australia. And there obviously are surfers in the UK who do that, who really chase waves. Like in other words, when it comes wintertime, they're going to Bali or they're doing something. They're really making that their mission, and good on them for doing that because that allows them to really enjoy surfing. But I think what you really also get into is like the surfers that don't have that ability to make it their full focused lifestyle and their business and their work around that. They're also making a choice. They're making a choice to either not immerse themselves into the surfing lifestyle in terms of how they approach everything that they do is for the purpose of surfing. I think
yeah,
when they go and if they're drinking and they're vaping and they're eating shit food, whatever. I mean, shit in, shit out. It's a simple saying, like you've
yeah,
got to have the balance. You've got to be able to do what you need to do to be able to be the best surfer you can be. And it's not about being pro level. It's just being if you because the thing with surfing, you've experienced it. Surfing is the most frustrating sport if you are hacking. If you're hacking and you can't make your takeoff, so you can't get a good pop up, and you're wiping out or you whatever, you can leave the water frustrated, but the whole point of surfing is that you go out there and you feel refreshed, like you feel like a new person. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a full suit with a hoodie and booties and gloves and whatever, it's like, if that's, it's still the feeling that you get
Mm.
surfing and being out in the ocean. And it's that ability to be able to challenge yourself for the rest of your life, which it does. It humbles you. The ocean will always humble you. The sheer
Yeah.
power of the ocean will, doesn't matter how good a surfer you are and how experienced you are, it'll just smack you down and say, I'm the boss. The ocean is an incredibly powerful uh, aspect where you realize how insignificant you are. So that to be able to achieve a goal where you can actually surf well and you can elevate your own performance in the ocean and in the conditions is really a most rewarding feeling that can get people through the darkest of times. I was talking to a friend just the other day about, like last week, I was having a bad week. I had a lot of pressure on a lot of things, a lot of decisions to make on a few things, and it was kind of weighing me down. And I hadn't surfed for about 4 or 5 days or whatever, and I went, I'm just going to go for a surf. I went for a surf, first wave, got barreled, spat out, came back home, and went, jeez. Nothing else had changed. The problems were still there, but my mindset towards tackling those problems
Yeah.
had monumentally shifted. And as a result, it like drew different energy towards um, how I dealt with the rest of the week. And honestly, like Ross, like, I think people don't realize the healing qualities and the stuff that you get from surfing that transcends anything else. Like it's
Yeah.
any surfer. It's that old saying, the surfer knows the feeling. It's true. It's like if you surf and you are focused as a surfer, it gives you so much more than you actually take. Like it's giving you a whole aspect of the way that it centers your life, and
Yeah.
the need to go and be on the pistol the whole time or drugs or whatever is, it doesn't even exist in my world. It doesn't. It's like it is my natural high. It's and I'm in a fortunate position from a young age doing what I did with surfing and then linking it with shaping, is that I literally, somebody asked me this question on the weekend, and I literally get as excited shaping a board for a customer as like I'm going for a surf. It's crazy. So I'm in my happy space all the time. I'm like in the water and in the shaping bay, and it's like
Nice.
it literally is my happy space and it's my
Yeah.
happy bubble, and through that I'm getting joy all the time. And being around for 55 years so far, like I've got this thing now where it's just surround yourself with positive energy. I think it's a key thing. The world's a crazy place at the moment. We know that.
Yeah.
Like it's not a place at the moment in this world that you think, geez, you can feel centered, you can feel in control of what you do. So for me, it's about surrounding myself with positive people, surrounding myself with positive experiences, so that that helps me navigate this crazy world that we're living in
Yeah.
at the moment.
Yeah. That's it. There's so many instances where it sort of really helped people. I've had my moments where I mean, I didn't surf for 2 years around COVID because of just how things happened to pan out. But I ended up moving into a van, grabbing a longboard, and got myself back in. And one of the best things I ever done. I had a friend come down um, last year who was gonna. Obviously, I won't mention names, but he was heading over to North Europe. Um, really bad run with his kids, and was basically going to switch switch things off. He's going to pay
Yep.
for that injection and see you later. Thankfully, he popped down for a couple of days, and after knowing him for 25 years, 24 years, finally got him on a surfboard. and well, he's still with us. So that was a plus. Like he had such a good time.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Took an absolute hiding, like to the point that I was a bit optimistic with him. There's a nice little rip that runs out. I was like, yeah, we'll go through that, mate. It'll just pop you out to the side. Just follow me. When I go past such and such, hang a left and you'll be fine. You'll be right in the lineup. And like it's one of those, like you got that friend that's never really done it before and like, oh yeah, it's still there. Paddle, 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 duck dive, paddle. Oh, where's he gone? Like anyway, I was like, oh, he'll be all right. And yeah, so I looked back and I could see the lifeguard looking in our direction. I was like, nah, don't do it. And there's my mate having an absolute mare. And I was like, oh no. So I spun around, like, I think I was on a foamy actually. And it's a certain spot called Harlin. It's quite a fat wave, especially on
Yeah.
the right, on a higher tide. Brilliant for a long board or a chunky board. Anyway, I'm on this foamy, so it cruised in, and yeah, he just had a bit of a mission, like struggling to keep up, and he's on this like super wide uh, yellow 9 foot soft tech. They're pretty much a paddleboard. Like that's a lot of board to kick around. I can't think what they call that one, but yeah, it's got to be like 25 inches wide, and yeah, so lifeguard helps him. I'm there having a chat. I'm like, you're right, mate. He's like, oh, but once he got his breath back, he's like, I'm having such a good time. Like, you nearly died. Pretty sure, like, the lifeguard hadn't been paying attention. I clearly wasn't. Like, it was
Oh,
one of
that's
those. But
awesome.
yeah, no, he come up. He had a good time. Straight back on the board. I think he had about 10 minutes on the beach, but he paddled straight back out. He had another surf that afternoon and stood up like on a green wave.
There
Um,
we go.
yeah, it's a perfect little day for us. Sort of waist to chest high, and
Awesome.
like I say, these fat, like real wedgy little peelers coming through. It was like ideal day. But yeah, so he's gone from basically trying to finish things with himself to being like having things rekindled. Um, And yeah, like I say, he's still works. He still threatening to come back down and have another surf. Well, I'm getting some armbands, but yeah. So it's amazing how them sort of experiences can help. And I just to finish that bit off because that's a whole nother conversation. But I think a lot of people aren't getting the right challenges and the right stresses in life, and I think that's one of the reasons
Agree.
people are so addicted to surfing is
Yeah.
you are, like you said earlier, you're never going to win as such. You're never going to complete this game. I mean, if
No.
Slater hasn't completed it, then no one is. But um, you, there's always going to be something. There's going to be a day that I don't know. The wind's just super offshore, and you're just not getting in as much. You're like, come on, like 20, 30, 40 years experience. I can't even paddle into a wave, or there's just a million people out and you're not even surfing as such, you're just playing slalom. Or maybe it's just cold and your bones ache, like you're just starting to creak as you're trying to paddle. And there's always going to be something that's going to make it hard. But that's the whole idea is you go out there, you do the hard thing, but you enjoy the process of it. And then you go and do it again and again and again. You keep coming back, spending more money, spend your entire life just floating around. Some people think, what on earth are they doing? But you're having the best time. And I think that's why so many people stick with it for so long.
Well, I mean, you've probably seen it, and I know in Australia, I mean, now obviously post COVID and all that, mental health issues are it
Yeah.
is massive, mate, like massive, and and the number of people dealing with it, and it's like kind of that little silent thing, you know, like it's not really spoken about so much, but it exists, and that's what surfing does, mate. Like it literally, it allows you to express yourself, it allows you to be you be one with something else that otherwise, with no judgment and nothing, you can just literally just go there and you can just do your thing. And I think when you come out of the water, it's you're left with this feeling of satisfaction, like this ease, this calmness of some sort. Like, we're not talking about like going out in a crowded lineup and end up having a punching fight. That'll never leave you calming. But the idea is that it's like, you go out there and, like I did last week, and literally came in and, hey, man, I'm like another person. Like literally, I was bogged
Yeah.
down and weighed down with everything, and then just free. And I think really that's the important thing, and it's worth spending the money to be able to get that feeling. And at least I'm not doing, I'm spending money in the right way, doing something that's giving me the positive end of life, like it's giving me the outcome is positive. You can go, okay, well, I could spend that on other things and I get positive, but I can tell you now the destruction later on is worse. So whether it be drugs, alcohol, or bad food, or whatever, and losing yourself into another vice that really just doesn't help you in the end of the day. You just regress, and you're
Yeah.
not actually progressing. And I think, again, it comes down to this different person, this different surfer, and the mentality about like, what do they want to do for themselves? Only you can choose whether you
Yeah.
want to advance your own surfing. You can either choose to be in despair, or you can choose to move forward. And I was having a chat with someone on the weekend, and just about mindfulness, and it's honestly, it's like we're actually going to probably talk about this more, but it's really just about how you approach, surfing for for what it is. And then everything else, like shapers, surfboards, coaching, those are all tools to support the main goal is surfing.
Yeah.
And I think really, if we put it into that perspective, anyone watching this and anyone who goes and says like, okay, I love surfing, I'm hooked, I'm like, that's what I want to do. Well, then that's what you got to do, is you got to start surrounding yourself with the tools that are going to give you that best experience. And unless you're actually committed to that as an individual, you will never truly benefit from surfing. Like, when you make it your lifestyle and everything that you do is around that lifestyle, then that's when surfing just enriches your life
Yeah.
constantly, forever and ever and ever. And it gets you through all those bad things in life that are
Yeah.
thrown to you, all those curveballs that keep coming. So
That's
yeah,
it.
mate, like it's good. It's good chat. I mean, it's, like my role as a shaper is just one aspect, but it brings another aspect to surfboards and surfers. And every surfer that I try and meet who gets a board from me, for example, like I try and influence their surfing experience in a way that they're enriched. And I think that if we keep doing that's the beauty of surfing. It's like another community again. It's like
Yeah.
we do think we have a common cause, common goal in terms of wanting to improve, but through that there's so much more that you get out of surfing. So I think really like that's got to be our sort of retained focus, I think,
Yeah.
going forward.
No, 100%. It's yeah, completely agree. If so for those that want to check out the sort of boards that you do design, and how can people reach out to you?
Well, I've simplified my name, which is a cool thing, because I used to be operate under Geraghty, my surname, which was absolutely a nightmare for anyone to remember or how to spell it. So it's really simple. It's gssurfboards.com. Geraghty
Nice.
Shapes, that's what it really stands for, gssurfboards.com. And yeah, just, it's slightly different. It's I don't talk about models. I talk about designs, because I believe that designs are created to work in functional waves, in different waves, and designs get adapted to suit each surfer. That's what I do. I find the best design, and if I don't have it, I create it. So like that's the beauty with shaping. So that's where you can find me. I kind of make boards here in Australia, but I basically ship them everywhere as well. So that's the other thing side of it. I think it's more about forging that sort of personal, customized context and relationship. That's the important goal for
Yeah.
me and my customers.
Amazing. Sounds great. Well, look, Dean, it's been brilliant having you on. It's been a great conversation, and I'm pretty sure if there's no time limit, this would have gone on for quite a bit longer. Um, and hey, maybe we can get a second episode done some point in the future.
Yeah, cool, man.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. All the
Awesome,
best,
Ross.
and we will catch up soon.
Excellent, Ross. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.